actually. So
we just wait until someone turns up and then start.
well, they're not used to us actually being here at 7 o'clock, are they? That's the thing.
Yeah. I know that's true. That's true. You're usually fanning about trying to connect all your channels. But tonight, because of the huge sponsorship deal we've struck, we can now afford a producer. This is really luxurious and special.
Yeah. Have you got anyone yet?
I don't know. You know me. I don't do it for the numbers or the views. I just do it to hang out with you on a Tuesday night.
You know me. I don't do it for the
Oh, what's that?
Oh, there we go. We got one. We got one.
We've got one. Don't go away. Please stay.
Don't go away. Don't go away. Ian Duncan. I like Ian Duncan. He used to be what was his position in the UK government? I forget now.
Oh, he may have heard that before.
Or he may have heard that before.
If that's true,
he's gone now. No.
Brilliant. Well done. Right. Oh, and
hey, was that our producer that did that? That made that happen?
I'm not doing that. This is great, isn't it? So we can respond to the comments that come onto the screen chosen by our top producer in the background.
Excellent.
But I look invisible.
She's got a green outfit on. Or it's
yeah. She's
AI
there.
plant. Yeah. Is it AI maybe?
I'm in disguise, but I'm gonna let you guys have a good old gas, and I'll put any interesting comments up.
I do have some good old gas this evening, I'm afraid to say, but I'm sure luckily I'm in the car on my own on that sort of occasion. How are you, Tony?
Yeah, I'm very wealthy. I've got a bit of a cold. I tell you something funny.
Sound a bit coldy.
Yeah. You know, my mum always used to say, "Oh, don't go out in that rain. You'll catch your death of cold." You know that, and I always just roll my eyes and go, "Mum, it's bacteria or a virus." You know, the cold, the wet. So anyway, yesterday morning, I got up for my morning run, and it was 300 days of sunshine. So I went out and had a run, and of course got absolutely soaked. And so by the afternoon I was sneezing, and today's a very rare day for me because I didn't go out and do my steps at all. I just got this morning. I had my alarm set for 5. I looked at it and went no. And
really?
Got up at
most
8.
Unlike you.
Got up at 8, which might sound early for some, but for me is very, very late.
Yeah. I know. And did you feel the spirit of Jordan Peterson berating you? And what's his name? The Bruv Party guy, Andrew Tate, standing at the top of your bed saying, "Get up, you weakling."
Oh, yeah. Well, I did read something interesting today, funny enough, and it said you should never tell people you feel sick. You should tell people you're getting better.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Well, yes, on that note, I think scientists can add to virus and bacteria mother's autosuggestion. Because finally, she was right, wasn't she? That
she was right.
Yeah. That can be entered into the scientific canon, I think, officially now.
Yeah, well,
and you're the living proof.
Look, I'm sure most of us. This is what's happened, Fleedom. Carl has a lot more subscribers than I do, and now he can afford a producer. He's got a producer, and he's right now he's in his private jet. That's what's happening. He doesn't even have to be in the studio anymore. He's coming to you live from 30,000 feet.
I'm on my way to see Andrew and his brother, whatever his brother's name is. We're into discussions about the Bruv Party. There's going to be a position for you in that cabinet, obviously, Tony.
You're going to put me in the cabinet? It could be worse. It could be in the shoebox.
No, in the Bruv Party cabinet.
Bruv cabinet. What's it called? What's it stand for again? It's
terrible. I don't know. I only know that because you told me last week.
Britain's rank underpants party or something. I don't know. It was terrible.
Yes, I'm in.
Yeah.
Right. Now, there are a number of things you suggested we talk about. I did like Battle of the Beliefs, and you sent me a pretty shocking document, which I don't think I'll be able to read on my small screen on the back of the seat of my private jet.
Which one was that?
The existential iceberg, which had me thinking, it's like, what beliefs, battle of the belief systems, what is it that gets you through? Is that your sort of article of faith then, the existential iceberg? Is that why you shared it with me?
What I'm interested in about the existential iceberg is a lot of these ideas, and I'm sure I'm not the only person that's had this experience. but a lot of these, I can remember kind of independently thinking about these when I was a kid. So the idea is that there's some thoughts you can have, or some kind of epiphanies or realizations you can have, that can cause you to have some kind of existential crisis. Okay.
Yeah.
So for example, a lot of them have got a lot to do with free will.
Yeah.
So one example might be this idea, and I can really remember thinking about this when I was really little, is thinking, if I know how any two atoms behave, because there's laws, allegedly there's laws that tell you how things behave. What is it? Cause and effect.
Yeah.
So if I know how any two atoms in the universe behave, and I have the resources, I should be able to extrapolate everything else that's going to happen going forward from the interactions of those two atoms. Yeah.
Yeah. Possibly. Yeah.
Well, possibly, yeah.
Yeah.
So this leads into this idea that everything is predetermined because of this very simple law about cause and effect.
Mm-hmm.
Like randomness is an illusion and everything like that. But yeah, this is an example of something that's on the existential
iceberg
crisis now, and at the top of kind of the sort of more mundane ones.
Are you going to put it on the screen? Can you do that?
I can. I'm trying to find the best version of it, because there's a few. Maybe if I open this one.
And it is in the realm of beliefs, isn't it? I mean, I don't have, in the way that you and I were having a bit of a ding dong on WhatsApp earlier on today, in the same way that I'm not too fussed about debating, I'm not too fussed about beliefs either. I think they're a kind of parlor game, sort of sideshow. They are something that goes on in the mind of humans that is irrelevant to the reality. Although if subscribed to, can affect the reality of that individual who is influenced by those ideas, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, it's just it's still interesting to me, just as kind of thought experiments, and I wondered if people thought of these things as what would cause existential crises. So, like,
I'm not having an existential crisis, Freedom. I am in my private jet.
A
midlife crisis. A midlife crisis is a bit different, I think, to having those sorts of thoughts, Freedom. But I thank you for your concern there. Good to see you, Jackie, as well. I didn't realise the comments would be so small.
Oh yeah, I've had that as well. When you're on a phone, they kind of just
tiny,
scroll by
they?
as well, and they scroll by. Yeah. I just to give you an example,
would you like
because
to read the comments out?
Actually, yeah, we'll come back to you to read some of the some of the comments out for the visually impaired a little bit later on, if that's okay.
Just give me a shout when you want that. Okay.
Oh, she is good, isn't she?
She's doing very well. She's doing very well. Yeah. So some of them people who are with us tonight may have heard of, but some of them are kind of, let's say, a little bit, more easy to think about, like God made everything, for example. And obviously the problem with God made everything, because if you're sort of a true believer Christian and you believe that God made everything, that means he also made things that seem to be mistakes, like
not very nice things in our judgment.
Yeah. Like I don't know, cancer or lao worms, for example. Worms
and narcissistic psychopaths, etc. All the things we judge as not liking or wanting in our world. Yeah. So, okay.
So I remember
why is it an iceberg? Why is it an iceberg? Is it because it reveals itself to you as it melts, or something along those lines, or is it?
I just think the idea is the worst ones are deeper. They're hidden.
Okay,
so I guess the idea is that the most dangerous part of an iceberg is under the water. But one of them could be like, and this is one I thought about when I can remember thinking about this when I was very young as well. It's probably the first time I've sort of really thought about being an atheist, was when I thought about, for example, let's take where does sin come from, right?
Mhm.
Where does sin come from? And sin relies on having freedom of choice. But where does so I used to think about this all the time. There must be like a leading edge when there's a choice made in your mind. There must be like a lead, you know what I mean? There must be some things that come together in your mind. And so people talk about you having a spirit, but then you also have genetics, right? And then you also have your life experience, and then you also have the luck of being where you are. So it might be quite easy to be a nice person without sin if you're born into certain situations, let's say.
Yes.
But
Yes,
but
privilege.
my idea was that in a way I don't think I could hold anyone responsible for any actions, because assuming that God gives everyone a clean spirit,
Yeah.
right, then after that the only two possible places that your behavior can come from is from your DNA or the environment.
Yes.
There's nowhere else it can come from. So when you have that realization, so this is the chance to have an existential crisis, because when you have that realization, you realize that obviously for practical purposes you can't do this, but if you have that realization and accept it at face value, you really can't hold anyone responsible for any of their actions, even if there's no spirit. All your behavior either comes from the genetics you were born with, or your environment, the environmental pressure. So it's completely unreasonable to hold anyone responsible for any actions, good, bad, or otherwise. So this would be an example of a possible existential crisis.
It sounds a lot like being in a philosophy course where you would ponder these things. What practical application would they have, do you think?
Well, it doesn't have any particular practical applications. It's like simulation theory.
Right. So you're running a kind of existential simulation for the purposes of entertainment.
So, for example, as a like I accept when I hear, and maybe at some point somebody smart will come along and explain to me what is wrong with the theory of simulation theory. But for example, when I have had simulation theory explained to me, I find it hard to imagine that we're not in a simulation. The logic seems really sound, because it's just the odds against it that are virtually infinitely high, that we're not in a simulation.
But have you not put yourself in a suggestive position by entertaining the thought in the first place?
Well, not really. I am I'm okay with just saying, well, for practical reasons, I can't. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
What am I going to do with it? Am I just going to fall into a puddle of? Am I just going to fall into a puddle of nihilism? It doesn't make any sense, you know.
Yes. Yeah.
And then so there's a lot of these examples. And another one that's quite further down is the omnipotence paradox. Do you know about that?
Yes. No. Sounds interesting though.
Well, you may have seen the meme that talks about it. So whenever there's a natural disaster, the meme usually gets turfed out, which is, so there was a tsunami and it killed 100,000
where was God?
people.
Where was God?
Where was God? So God either made it happen.
Yeah.
Didn't do it, but chose not to stop it. Didn't do it, but couldn't stop
There's
it.
a lot of presupposition in there, though, isn't there? You have to start somewhere with that theory.
Or wasn't there. Yeah.
Yes.
But what other solutions? This is the thing. You've been given these 4 solutions. Can you think of a fifth one? Can you think of a fifth one?
Well, not once I've been put in that position. Probably not. I mean, that's the trick of those things, isn't it? If this is so, then only these 4 things could be so as a result. I would question the original premise. I think that's a false premise. And interestingly, when you said if God made everything and then went on from there, that to me is a very interesting proposal or statement, because that's Another way of looking at God would be to say whatever made everything is God, which is different to God made everything, isn't it? That would be my, the biggest thing you can think of, the everything, the all, the intelligence behind and including everything to me is God, not some sort of partial thing that becomes a premise, which then makes those things the case. Oh, is this God here now?
Yeah, God.
the producer.
God,
Right.
the producer.
Yeah.
May I enter into the conversation briefly?
Come on, look at
here
that.
we go. We said this shouldn't happen, didn't we? This wasn't meant to happen.
Paul said there are lots of presuppositions.
I'm gonna have an existential crisis.
Me too. We're gonna walk. Munson and the Geezer might walk.
Okay, I'll piss off.
No,
go on then.
no,
Go on.
Oh, come on.
Well, we can't truly have freedom. Like, there are, I think a lot of it depends on, the original sentiment there, the whole idea about the omnipotence paradigm, like I think of God as maybe being a parent, and, not like life doesn't always go very easy for our children. And sometimes we can see they're in danger, but we allow them to have their own experiences. We allow them to grow. If we controlled their environment, like right now, one of our kids is rock climbing for the first time, and given the choice, I would go there with him. Thankfully, I'm here, so I'm not like spoiling his cool or anything, or completely.
But I'm Old Testament, you see. I'm Old Testament, so I'm here allowing him to hurt himself potentially, while New Testament mum is far away at home.
Exactly, and that's how it should be. And maybe God's a bit like that. And I know, like a tsunami isn't a human, but maybe the oceans also belong to God, and maybe the sky also belongs to God, and maybe he doesn't get involved. He lets all of his beings.
That's why there are atheists. That's why there are atheists. That sort of talk.
Yeah.
But I agree with you, Louise. So I agree with you, and I think the producer. Sorry, I agree with you, Madame Producer. But
I've been to that club.
It's probably an existential crisis for not for theists, but for religious people, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? So what I'm saying is, you can have a concept of God who is, keeps his distance. Like, this is what I do. I'm like this. So if my kids are riding a bike and they fall off their bike, I kind of hang back and see if they're going to get up and get on with it themselves. And if they do, then I don't intervene. So this is a non-interventionist God, right? But this is very much not the God of Christian faith, is it? So for a mainstream Christian, this could cause an existential crisis, couldn't it?
Well, maybe. But let's own it. Let's make it interesting and own it, because I think you sound like a pair of modern radical reverends in the pulpit on a Sunday, and someone says, "Why does God let bad things happen?" And then the radical reverend thinks for a moment and says, "I know. I'll do the old parenting metaphor and see if that flies with this lot." And often it does.
Well, as parent producer here, I'm going to clear off and let you have your own experience.
She's going to hit us with a plague or something.
No, before I go, would you like me to read out some of the?
Yeah, please. That would be great. Because I can't see him.
Chat room. Okay, so you've got there's loads of people watching, which is great. So Shannon Renee is saying howdy from Texas. Hey Shannon.
Howdy Shannon, nice to see you.
We've got Ian Duncan still here. Jackie is joining us saying, "Am I the only one?" Hi
Jackie.
Here?
It feels like that sometimes, Jackie.
Fleedom was a bit worried that you were about to off yourself, but you're not.
Midlife crisis, not end of life crisis.
We've got F Silver. Hi guys from frigging freezing California.
Really?
Ian is saying, I would like to say thanks to Tony again. He's been giving me advice a lot the last 2 days about land. What a star he is.
Oh, you're welcome. Ooh. Thank you very much. He did buy me a couple of coffees.
Oh, well, that's nice.
That out there as well.
And he's got a bridge for sale as well.
I see. Can we live on it like trolls? Hugh is here saying a big hi. Fleedom is saying most likely Uranus or Uranus. You lose
disgusting.
a bit.
I know Fleedom. It definitely wasn't Uranus.
Okay. He's saying you lose a little bit of your spirit every time you play with yourself. I've got bad news for you.
He's full of something tonight, isn't he? Yes.
Anthony Littlewood is saying,
Excited.
what's up, geezers? Just pause the Duran channel to jump on here. What's
Is that
Duran
not the Quran? The Quran channel
Duran-
or the Duran channel?
No, it doesn't say Duran. It just says Duran channel. I mean, if I was watching Duran, I don't know if you'd be here because I'd be.
Yeah,
you know,
Simon Le Bon would have your attention, right? But I think that's Quran, isn't it? Or unless it's a
Simon-
band, 80s band, Quran.
Simon Le Blob.
Quran.
Quran, the Islamic New Wave band.
Well, you know what? I mean, it's right on time because there is a new moon tomorrow. Sadly, it's not Monday, but Fleedom is here saying, I just saw an Airbus pass behind Carl. Anthony Littlewood is saying Archaics by Jason Brashear is a great source for simulation theory. I actually think we are in a simulation for what it's worth. Nothing, but Fleedom saying the good thing about falling down a puddle of nihilism is that there's nothing at the bottom.
Wow.
Very deep.
Oh,
that's deep.
That's deep. Hey.
And he also adds, how old were you thinking about these things?
That's what I wanted to ask you, Tony. I wanted to know if there was an adult around who you could share these ideas with, because often these are the sort of thoughts that you keep to yourself when you're a kid, aren't they? Because you think,
there was no.
I don't know. It's like a Freudian thing, isn't it? Really?
Nobody I could talk to about that stuff. Nobody.
Did you try, or did you pride yourself on being private, introverted, and intellectual?
I think that nobody who knew me then may have known there was that side of me,
or would have just told you to cheer up, you little sod, and go and watch telly or something like that.
Well, I kind of my first sort of existential crisis, if it was, I don't want to overblow it. I didn't like, but I was very, very. When I say young, I wasn't a teenager. I was before being.
Oh, bless you. Yeah,
And what had happened was, it was my mum. She was going through a phase of trying to get back into going to church, and so I got dragged along to that, and dragged is the word, but I remember I had to go to Sunday school, for example. But at the same time, my mum bought me a lot of science books.
Yikes.
So I was into I liked reading books about space, and I liked reading books about dinosaurs and things like that. And I remember, thinking this is weird. So I experienced cognitive dissonance, although I wouldn't have been able to put a name to it. But I was sat in Sunday school listening to a person tell me this. They always tell children this. The thing is, well, no, I'll just say it. They always tell children the silliest stories. In Sunday school, and
for example, in what way, or what?
Well, Noah's Ark.
Right. Okay. But it's only silly if you apply it literally, right? These are useful stories in a way, aren't they, to illustrate something?
Yeah, but you say that, and I think that
I do.
Yeah. Well, I get. Yeah, of course you do. But when they're taught it, and if you've ever read Sunday school teaching books, they always make a point of saying make it real, because the idea is you've got to get children. They know it. That you got to get children indoctrinated early, otherwise they're gonna, you don't want them seeing the other stuff. You don't want them knowing that. Hang on a minute.
Wow,
how can the Earth only be 6,000 years old if dinosaur fossils are? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Well,
so I had that very early.
If you're raised by paleontologists, it would be the other way around, wouldn't it?
Probably.
Dinosaur parents make it sound really real, so they reject all the other stories.
So I mean, you can say with perfect utility, well, the God I believe in, made the first replicators and had a plan that all those things would become life as we know it on Earth. And that's fine, but that's not the God of the Bible.
No, okay,
you know what I mean? So you can say all these things.
I'll take your word for it.
But you can say all these things, can't you? You can say, well, I believe in a God. It's like the dream of Shiva. You know what I mean?
No. No,
You don't know about like the Hindu gods and
no. Well, I've heard of Shiva. I don't know what that particular reference is.
some religions almost imply that we're a simulation running inside a mind of a god who's sleeping.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Fair enough.
You
Yeah.
know, whereas
again,
in a way the god, the Christian God, is very much an alive entity who's interventionist.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. And outsources some of the work to the stewards on the earth.
right.
That sort of model.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely in Catholicism.
Yeah.
He does that. He or she.
Yes.
You know,
They.
well, even then, that's a bit modern of me to say that, because I think the traditionalists would say it's definitely a he. But
Yes.
the point is, it's fine for us to have our own ideas of what God is, but we can't then claim we're talking about the same God, can we? When we're comparing it to the God of the
where
Bible.
you've driven down the road into belief a little bit. So my question would be, do we need beliefs at all? I don't think we do, you see.
Yeah, but I mean, in a way, that's another question. All I'm saying is that for I think for Christians, this line of thinking, like I expect if I was talking to possibly not a Church of England vicar, they'd probably be okay with the conversation, because I think I read somewhere that suspected spam caller.
Take it. Let's see who it is. Let's see what your Portuguese is like.
It's going to be recorded. It's going to be
Come on,
recorded.
do it.
Hang on a second.
Oh, it's going onto Bluetooth. We're going straight through the desk. Or I'll speak to him if you want. Olá, boa tarde. Estou?
Who is it?
That's amazing. They've actually now won 250. They've. It's the $250,000 call to Munson and The Portugeeza.
Huh?
Saying that you're not paying the electric bill.
And I'm not paying the electric bill. Hang up on this idiot. Just hang up on him. What a joke.
Yeah, demanding to be paid for the electric bill. How dare they? I had that with my water bill as well. Got cut off 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. My electric bill is paid by
Direct debit.
direct debit. Yeah.
Well, so I thought with my water bill, Tony, only to discover that it was disconnected by the local authority. I thought it was all.
I don't feel like they're going to call me at 7:30 in the evening. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe my power's about to be cut off. But
Well, mate, me and the producer will take care of business if you suddenly are plunged into darkness over there.
Oh, thank you. No, but
Right, so
yes.
where were we? Beliefs. Do we need them at all?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if we need them at all. I don't.
Do
know
you
if
believe that we need beliefs? I don't think we do. They are they're an icing on the cake of existence and reality. They are things that we amuse and comfort ourselves with.
The thing is, I pretend that I make my own. Like, for example, you remember Christopher Hitchens?
Yes, I do.
I'm sure many of our
Esteemed community.
Many people in our community would remember Christopher Hitchens, and I was fascinated with a lot of the things he said, and I had all of his books, and there was a while where I bought into that a lot. But I remember one thing that bothered me was he was he called Blaise Pascal a coward, and it annoyed me somehow, because Blaise Pascal, you've heard of Pascal's wager.
Is that the French philosopher Pascal?
Yeah, you've heard of Pascal's wager. Right?
Is that the wager with God, like covering all the?
Well, I guess it wasn't with God, but it was about God. So he said, "Well, I'm going to live as a Christian."
Yeah.
Just
either
in
way,
case.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, what's the worst that can happen? I have a righteous life, and Christopher Hitchens described him as a coward. You know.
Yeah.
And I thought, and I was getting to a point where I thought sometimes I thought the problem with Christopher Hitchens is, even though I think he's an intelligent guy and a thoughtful guy, a very, very good debater, although we've had conversations about that before, but sometimes I thought he was just bloody mean. He was mean.
And the irony of being
I
called,
think
he was called Christopher. He was called Christ himself, wasn't he? Amazing.
So I got to a point sometimes where I saw him being mean, and he was probably the first person who I saw. I actually don't see these kind of videos so much anymore. Maybe because I don't watch them. Maybe YouTube has stopped showing them to me. But these
I'm
like
sure.
Christopher Hitchens, Rex. You know, it was like Rex Nunn. You know what I mean? It was like that.
Sorry, that is awful.
Christopher Hitchens sends African nun crying back to Somalia or something.
Back to the convent. Yeah.
I like,
big man,
really?
big tough guy.
Yeah. Good on you. You know what I mean?
Well, from what I saw of him, I mean, my benchmark for all of these characters, you know, like the Jordan Petersons and Andrew Tates of the world, all of them, you know, would you want to be that person? I think you can get sort of showboated and entertained by their rhetoric.
Yeah.
You know, and when you're young and impressionable, it's easy to do that, isn't it? But when you think, hold on a minute, I'm tuning into this person. This is not a human being I would anyway like to emulate in terms of their living life. Isn't that the best test?
One of my benchmarks also is, would I leave my children with them?
Yes, very good. And the 2 pints, there's the 2 pints theory, isn't there? Would you get onto a second pint with this person? Would you have a courtesy 1 pint, or is it going to be 2 pints with that person? His brother Peter, yes. Love Peter Hitchens. He has a later found humility, I think, that maybe Christopher Hitchens never had the chance to cultivate. But Peter Hitchens talks of his life when he was a Marxist, like a serious communist, and how he's become a far, or by the estimations of others, a far right guy. Hold on a minute, this.
Peter Hitchens is an example of someone like this. There's a subject he speaks a lot about, which is drug legalization. You know,
yes,
and I'm an example of a person. I don't take drugs. I don't drink alcohol. But generally speaking, I believe that as far as possible, people should have the freedom of choice to do what they want. And when I worked in social care, for example, I at least in part, thought that a lot of the harm that was being done to people and the community with regard to drugs was caused by it being illegal.
Yeah.
So it is a difficult line, but I thought that a lot of the criminality, the ill health, and the other negative effects that were coming from the users of drugs that I worked with, a lot of that was coming. That was a product of the criminality.
Yeah, fair enough. And who
know what I mean?
to speak? Yeah, who's better to speak of it than somebody with some personal experience rather than just a lofty philosophical point of view?
But Peter Hitchens won't accept that. So for Peter Hitchens, he has to save people from themselves. Whereas my argument to him would be, even if heroin was freely available, I wouldn't take it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I do remember we're going off on a tangent here, Munson.
It's unlike us, isn't it?
Yeah, but I do remember seeing some experiments where I mean, you must. Have you ever had an experience where you've been in hospital and you've been on morphine, for example?
No, I haven't. Never. No.
A few years ago, I was in hospital and I was in a lot of pain. And I had they call it a morphine buzzer. They call it
what you could administer yourself.
Every 4 hours I could press a button and of course it felt awesome and the pain went away. And they talk to you about it because they say there's a risk of becoming addicted.
Really?
To the morphine. Yeah, it's a risk.
And they're telling you that while you're in terrible pain.
Yeah. But when I left the hospital, I didn't want any more morphine. And it reminded me of an experiment I saw, which they did on rats, funnily enough, which and what they did is they gave some rats like cages that were very, very comfortable, had all the food, all the toys, everything they needed.
Anything a rat might want.
Everything a rat might want. And they had 2 water bottles. One of them had some cocaine, I think it was. One of them had a little bit of cocaine in it, and the other one just had water. And then in another cage, they had nothing, just the bare minimum. There was horrible existence for the rats. And overall, there was a a very high statistical correlation between the comfortable rats choosing not to drink the cocaine-laced water, whereas the rats who
yeah. And
so
somewhere there are rats talking about us in much the same way, and how ridiculous, how we're not able to do that. You know, do you remember our relatives who got taken in for that experiment, and actually carried themselves very well and showed a good account of ratdom? And if you look at these humans who are doing that experiment to us, look at the state they get themselves in, and all those scientists are having a little go on the on part of the the trial substances. Well, no, that'd be a scurrilous accusation, but it's the sort of thing human beings might do, isn't it? Is our producer still there? And have we got anyone commenting?
Freedom's asking. Would I?
Oh, there, the cosmos
Wouldn't I try heroin if it was legal? I mean, no, I wouldn't. You know,
I've no interest. No, I
don't understand why. It's often because of the bad stigma that you wouldn't know. It's not because of the bad stigma that I wouldn't. I just, to be honest with you, like I would relate it back to the same reason why I quit smoking and alcohol eventually, is because I hate having things in my life that stop me from thinking clearly, and things that I feel are reducing my ability to control myself. You know?
Yeah, fair enough. A laudable angle there.
Would you like me to read some out?
Yes, please. And we really like your choice of image there, producer.
I was trying to disassociate my head from my body because I'm wearing a green top, but it wasn't quite the right shade of green.
Okay.
Opted for space.
These green screens have got so much better as well, haven't they now?
I think it's because we haven't got the full lighting on yet, but I'm going to use this top in future. So Freedom is saying, "Into my arms, oh Lord, do you believe in an interventional God?" Carlos Skywatch is saying, "Good evening, folks."
Hi, Carlos.
Artur Domingos, your personal Jesus. Read Genesis. It's interesting.
Well,
now, you were talking about pop groups earlier as well. So I mean,
Genesis as well. Yeah. Well, there are parts of the Bible as well called Genesis. Right. Okay.
Okay. George is saying, "I don't see substantive differences between the simulation theory and any major religions." Freedom. I asked the age because you were clearly not playing Age of Empires on Windows 98. Okay,
what?
One way is more mathy. I don't know what this is about. JMC
Methy or mathy?
Mathy, M-A-T-H-Y.
Not methy. Okay.
No, it's not messy either. JMC is saying one can see God with meth. Arthur is saying Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna to you too.
Shiva, the destructor and the creator of life. So yeah, I'm guessing there's people here that understand a little bit about Hinduism.
Yes.
Freedom is it's God calling dummy.
Of course. Yes, we didn't think of that, Tony.
About my
nobles are saying,
I mean, imagine that. Imagine being God calling you on the phone and being marked down as suspected spam. That's the age we live in.
Well, that's what they say about that. That's what they say. You know, the second coming of Jesus. And he's probably already here, but he's locked up in some lunatic bin somewhere.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, full of meds. You know. No. I really
am.
I really am the real Jesus.
Yeah.
Apparently,
let me out, and I'll walk on water. No. Just get back.
But go back in there.
Like ascended masters aren't necessarily known in their actual time. They're known usually after their death.
I often feel like that. I felt like that a lot. Have you had that as well? Have you got? But do you have any of the what's it called? The what sort of complex is that? Messiah complex, Tony. Do you ever get pangs of that?
Well, you know, a few weeks ago you heard my story, my Christmas story. Yeah.
Oh yes. Oh yeah. No, I had it a lot as a kid because I went through a similar situation to you of being taken to Sunday school, being completely terrified, and then it occurred to me I might actually be the living Jesus as a small reborn child, and that nobody knew, and I entertained it more and more, which is not it didn't go down especially well, mainly because I didn't tell anyone. I just had it as a private kind of.
Well, this is an example of something that could be an existential crisis, couldn't it?
Yeah, and you and I both, you know, I just imagine us as our inner children now in those situations with, I mean, part of it is the sadness of not having someone to talk to about it, but also the arrogance, the junior arrogance of little people thinking something that they're nursing as a secret, and maybe it's a kind of, it's a weaponization, isn't it, of ideas when you're little, because it's the only power you've got.
Yeah. That's right. I often think about that, not just even when you're little, but with teenagers. Sometimes responses are to do with lack of power, perceived lack of power, I think. But certainly I can remember when I was a kid, I had a feeling. I don't feel like that now, by the way, but when I was young, had maybe Messiah
Thank you for pointing that out.
Messiah complex. But when I was a kid, I had this feeling that I was a lot more intelligent than everybody around me.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
do you honestly not have that anymore?
No, not as much. Now I'm
not as much.
Well,
toned it down a little bit.
No. What it is now I've met people who are clearly smarter than me. So it's kind of put me on my place. But I think when I was young, I was a little bit surrounded by people who were maybe not as.
Well, that's how you judge them anyway, right?
Yeah, that's how I judge them. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Or maybe, and they all may have been thinking the same thing as you. That's the bizarre thing, isn't it? And
Yeah.
Oh,
well, I don't know. I mean, a lot of people don't really think.
Oh, okay. Producer, did we have the nobles there? We had global nobles. Lovely to see them tonight.
Yeah, you're both so funny.
Oh, thanks.
You are.
I'm trying to be serious.
I'm having a look.
That's the problem, isn't it? He's actually trying to be really serious here.
JMC is saying, "I believe in good wine, and the rest is bollocks."
Oh.
Which, that's a fair thing to do. Lots of people do.
We all have our own God, don't we?
Exactly.
Worship takes many forms, I suppose you could say.
And Fleedom is getting back, saying, "You posted a good comment about that recently, JMC. What are the best regions to get wine from? The Douro, Alentejo. Who is this Alentejo? JMC, how about we try them all?" George is saying, "Does anything exist for naught? One wouldn't say that regarding objects. Why would one think differently about ideas, beliefs, and concepts?"
Oh, I love George Coelho. Senor Coelho. We met for the first time last week. We were talking about art, weren't we? Good to have you back.
We've got, I think this is the one that you've already said, Giza. Wouldn't you try heroin if it was legalized? It's often because of the bad stigma that you wouldn't. I think in cities like Toronto, I'm losing my voice. Sorry, drugs are legalized. Not a great side.
Where I disagree with that, because I see where you're going, and I often had this. I often had this debate when I was working in social care, because a lot of people who are more radical than me in their beliefs about drug legalization say that because a lot of people who, for example, Peter Hitchens, who is very much prohibitionist when it comes to drugs. Okay, he talks about, for example, weed being a gateway drug, and then the argument from the full legalization and freedom mob would be, well, you could make the same argument for coffee.
Yeah,
coffee could be a gateway drug. Whereas I come from a different perspective, because I actually also, when I worked in social care, I used to work with homeless teenagers, and I often would have this conversation with them, and I'd say the problem is there's this, it's kind of a false equivalence in a way, because I wouldn't ride my motorcycle at 180 kilometers per hour, although I sometimes do ride it at 120 kilometers per hour.
Yes. Well, your limit.
Yeah. I don't think they're equivalent. I don't think they're equivalent. I don't think they're as addictive as each other, for example. So there's a lot of aspects to it,
And
not
it's also, it brings us back to beliefs. It brings us back to the world of belief, which is speculation, and they're like spells to make people feel better, aren't they?
But some things are real also. Like, for example, heroin has very, very powerful physical addictions to it, which weed doesn't have for most people.
Yeah,
you
no,
know?
fair enough. I understand that. But then
Do you
when
know what I mean? I
turn-
think it's a false equivalent.
abs-
That's what I
for
mean.
sure, for sure. And it's also well into the area of beliefs, isn't it? And ideology, where people have a certain idea and propose a certain way of being or thinking about something that, as well as being a false equivalence, as you say, is saying a lot about them and their own where they're at in all
Yeah.
sorts of ways, where they're at emotionally, where they've been hurt by something and they want some sort of intellectual revenge or whatever. And it's kind of unuseful, isn't it? Because all of these things, whatever the policy is, it's only ever the individual that experiences the reality of it, and will always will. That's how we are as human beings, isn't it? Is living our lives.
Freedom's just made a good point. He said, yeah, you might ride at 180 kilometers or try a hit of. And then maybe a better question is, when I say I wouldn't ride over 120 kilometers per hour, you might ask me, so you've never ridden your motorcycle over 120 kilometers an hour, honestly? And then I might say,
that's how I know not to go over 120. Yeah.
He also said Jesus comes back as a zombie, but Tony is prepped up in his bunker. So that might be another reason.
Oh no, that's a terrible end to the movie.
Yeah,
that's a terrible part of the simulation. I don't like the sound of that.
But I mean, if we are in some kind of simulation about like learning the meaning of life or coming to faith and trust and truth or light or whatever, you know, if we've been kind of cut off from the source and our life is somehow premised on getting back to the source, getting back to the light, there would be loads of trials and tribulations, and maybe Jesus might come back as a zombie. You know, to
maybe,
see if
maybe, yeah.
our own movie.
Yeah. The other problem there,
become our own Jesus.
There is something about the trials and tribulations aspect, which can, like, if everybody's going through kind of trials and tribulations, sometimes one person's trial can be very difficult for another person.
Definitely.
So,
yeah.
So are they both having a? So I suppose the most simple way to think about it, look at that cross just sticking out the top of my head. This is the.
I've often noticed
did you do that deliberately?
Yeah, he did.
This is the little.
There are no mistakes.
My house.
There are no
mistakes. You can actually just see the side of my house in that picture. See the white wall? That's the side of my house.
Well, as in, I can see your house from this cross. Right. Okay.
Hey, that's quite funny, actually. Think about it. If I look out the window just over there, I'll probably be able to see that.
Right.
Our friend Sarah says, "Get off the cross. We need the wood."
Yeah, I love that. That's for people who may be making a little bit too much of their trials and tribulations. Sometimes they need
Can
that.
I share this comment? So Anthony Littlewood saying the repetition of affirmation leads to belief, and when that belief becomes a deep conviction, things begin to happen, and that's Muhammad Ali.
That makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? For better or for worse, whatever people believe and how it manifests in their lives. Yeah, for sure.
For example, you have the concept of two opposing armies, and they both are praying to God for victory. You know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Does that not say more about humans and prayer than it does about God, though?
Maybe.
Like, have you seen Shadowlands?
No.
Where you have what's he called? Hannibal Lecter, Anthony Hopkins.
Maybe.
And all of his sneering Oxford buddies say, "Oh, whatever he's called. Oh, Bunny, why do you pray to God? You silly man." They're all atheists, and he's of course C.S. Lewis, who is in the world of mystery and what they might see as superstition, and they're very rational. And it's a particular time in history, I think, where it would have been quite unpopular, unfashionable, and a bit sort of a bit uncool to be religious. And it's so beautiful. It's such a beautiful film, and there's a great line in it where he says to these sneering atheists, and
C.S. Lewis.
Yeah, he is portrayed as C.S. Lewis in the movie, and the sneering atheist vibe I'm talking about. I'm sure, Tony, you might have been on the end of it from time to time. And he says to this guy,
I might have been the sneering atheist.
Same here. So I know it from both sides of the pulpit, as it were. And he says, I don't pray to God because it changes God. I pray to God because it changes me.
Yeah.
And I think that is so beautiful and can help us with our projections and owning things and not blaming God and not having this rationalized polar relationship to the divine. It's essential and immanent and complete, and that's a sort of, you feel the power of praying to God because it changes you, rather than the, like in the army example you've given, two armies facing each other, both supposedly praying to God to win. That says something about them, doesn't it, more than it does about God, perhaps.
Geezers, you've got 9 minutes left. Would you like me to go away and then just come back with some comments at about 2 minutes too?
Read.
I'm
going away for 9 minutes.
Yeah, we could have a snooze, couldn't we, and then come back and just finish the show a bit later on.
Did
See that, Tony?
Do you not do it? Do you not do it on the hour, to the hour, or do you? Go
We
on
do, and often, interestingly, Tony has some sort of anecdote that he has experienced
yes, that we
during
end
the
the
week.
show on. So when there's like this, the thing is, if I hear something that sounds like a really lame kind of dad joke, I might just end the show a bit too early.
Guilty as charged. Oh, that's giving our secrets away as well, I think. I feel a bit
Did you ever see? I made a video called.
Is this one of his jokes? Is this one of your jokes?
No.
This could be it.
This is really not it. This is really not it.
Right, you'll make a sign.
I made a video called something like "I'm on Aslan's side."
Oh right, okay. I don't know C.S. Lewis that well.
What this was because I had a few people who were asking me about my because if people ask me, I say I'm a Christian. I'm a Christian, you know.
Yeah.
And that's a decision I've made.
Yeah.
And anyway, I was trying to think about how to explain my position, because I think I've explained before. Sometimes you can break sometimes you don't want to talk about things too much. Do you know what I mean? Because I don't want to. I don't think it's something that can be rationalized. But then I remember a book that I'd read. It's in the Narnia series, but it's not Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. I think it's called The Silver Chair. There's book 5, I think, and in book 5 there's a character called Puddleglum, and he is a marsh willow. That's what he is. He's some kind of mythical creature. He's called a marsh willow, and he gives a speech. And what it is in the story. There's a witch who's enchanted this part of the world so that it's always everyone's become sleepy and forgetful, right?
What a great metaphor! What a great metaphor!
Everyone's become sleepy and forgetful, and they don't realize that there should actually be a sun. So the sun's not shining, but nobody notices because they
oh my goodness! Is that is that book 7, Chemtrails? No, sorry, that's a different book. Sorry, go on.
And the Marshwiggle stands up and he says to the witch, he says, you know, all you've been saying is quite right. I'm a chap who's always liked to know the worst and then put the best face I can on it. So I won't deny any of what you said, but there's one more thing to be said even so. Suppose we have only dreamed or made up all those things, trees and grass and sun and moon and stars and Aslan himself. And of course, Aslan is C.S. Lewis's Jesus.
Yeah.
In that series, right? Suppose we have, then all I can say that is in that case, the made up things seem a good deal more important than the real ones. And suppose this black pit of a kingdom of yours is the only world. Well, it strikes me as a pretty poor one. And that's a funny thing when you come to think of it. We're just babies making up a game, if you're right. But 4 babies playing a game can make a play world which licks your real world hollow. That's why I'm going to stand by the play world. I'm on Aslan's side, even if there isn't any Aslan to lead it. I'm going to live like a Narnian, as much like a Narnian as I can, even if there isn't any Narnia. So thanking you kindly for our supper. If these 2 gentlemen and the young lady are ready, we're leaving your court at once and setting out in the dark to spend our lives looking for the overland. Not that our lives will be very long, I should think, but that's a small loss if the world's as dull a place as you say.
Oh, my word.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Lewis. C.S.
Isn't he?
Lewis.
I must read more C.S. Lewis, and I'd love to hear what you think about Shadowlands as well, because the portrayal I think is pretty special in that movie.
Yeah.
Wow, Tony, that's superb, and what a fabulous, metaphorical writing, and so useful in this time. I mean, he wrote that 70 years ago.
Yeah, you don't like to do the math.
Longer, much longer.
It makes you feel, it's maybe 100 years ago.
100 years ago, perhaps. Yeah. To suit a time and to tell a story, and to substantiate his own faith through the writing, I suspect, as well.
75 years ago.
Wow. Wonderful.
75 years ago. Long time. Blimey.
Okay. Well, star of the show then, C.S. Lewis, this evening. And have we got any more comments there, producer? I'd always like to make sure people have been honoured and acknowledged for
we've
being
got lots.
here.
Some of them are just like one word, as if people are
boring. That sort of
Ricardo Abonado.
Yeah, we've got Ricardo saying, "Why not live a decent life and let it be?"
Yeah, that could be it.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's really lovely. Especially sort of riffing on the idea of the C.S. Lewis story that you were talking about.
And Pascal's gamble, Pascal's
wager.
Yes. And then JMC is saying existentialism is a sign of old age. Good existentialists like me, a 60-year-old grumpy old farts.
Yay, good for you.
And then Freedom is saying, I'm half an existentialist, so he's obviously half the age.
A wannabe.
Yeah, he's not quite there. Lee McGrady saying good evening.
Evening, Lee. I'd love to hear.
Like that. He'd say it with a different accent, wouldn't he?
Evening all. He'd say evening all. And what utter bollocks, Munson. What utter bollocks. I think as well.
Freedom's talking, I think, about drugs still. He's been on a drugs drive for quite
a binge.
He's giving you.
He's doing a lot of self-censorship.
We've got absolutely no chance of any monetization.
Step 2, step 3, step 4 on how to go and score by the looks of it.
Oh dear, we're not going to get any money out of this video, then, are we? This is going right to the bottom of the nihilistic algorithm.
I think. Ricardo did earlier say Ali, as in Muhammad Ali, was a fool, believed a bunch of virgins after death.
Okay, yeah.
So there's a little bit of fight in the chat room.
Always.
Is that how it is with you guys?
It can be, but with a lot of respect. It's not black and white. That's what we're, it's a grey area. It's and it's open, and we don't try to be too conclusive or judgmental, even though we don't always manage to do
that. Lila is saying hello.
Hello, good evening to you.
Lila,
Tony,
one of your subscribers. I see what's happening. Yeah.
Lila or Lila. It's a beautiful name.
I see what's happening. Yeah, that's good. Thanks, producer. Keep it up. So Tony, did anything interesting happen in this last week to you?
Before we do that, I just want to ask you, what's the most I don't want to be offensive to any of our Portuguese.
Oh dear, he's going to be offensive.
But what's the most unusual Portuguese name you've come across?
Unusual. What, as in that you don't hear very often?
Yeah.
I don't know. Before we answer that, can I just say, Freedom is saying, I know I was outlining the steps of how one can easily become an addict, anti-drug arguments. My apologies. I wasn't being a very good producer there. My apologies.
Absolutely. Totally misrepresented.
We are really coming up for the last 30 seconds. So
no, it was just I met this guy today, and I said to him, what's your name? And he said to me, Jathan. Like Jaython, Jathan.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I really like to, I don't know about you, but I really like to try and remember.
That really was his name?
Yeah, Jathan.
I like the very old-fashioned Portuguese names that you don't hear very often, but I can't, none of them come to mind right now.
You can't remember any of them.
No, I can't. But anyway,
have you got any final thoughts? Have you got any final thoughts, Portugeeza?
Right. Well, obviously, just let me explain this because it was quite funny.
Okay.
So I really like to try and remember people's names. So I said it a few times. I said Jathan, Jathan. I said, okay, nice to meet you, Jathan. And he said, are you serious right now?
Munson and the Portugeeza. Munson and the Portugeeza. Reporting from the scene. Munson and the Portugeeza. News in every ride.